from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories: the race to rescue hundreds of people still trapped beneath the rubble following the strongest earthquake in Taiwan in 25 years. Our other headlines: the US-Israel alliance straining under the pressure of Gaza. President Biden due to speak to Prime Minister Netanyahu, their first contact since the death of those 7 aid workers.
I believe in America and Europe together in NATO.
Ceremony and cake for NATO's 75th birthday, but a warning from the head of the military alliance to stay true to the original recipe. And US Secretary of State Janet Yellen arrives in China as the two countries seek to reset economic relations. Rescuers are searching for hundreds of people still trapped or missing in Taiwan after the strongest earthquake in 25 years. At least 10 people have been killed and around 1,000 injured as the 7.2 magnitude quake damaged buildings and triggered landslides. Our correspondent Patrick Falk reports.
Rescue efforts following Taiwan's biggest quake in a quarter of a century are paying off. Official video released on Thursday shows airlift teams plucking miners to safety. Around 70 of them have been trapped in 2 separate rock quarries since yesterday. Local media reports also say some members of a group of hotel employees who were trapped in a convoy of minibuses after the quake struck have found their way to safety. The others reportedly are in good health. In Hualien City, near the epicenter of the quake, people are picking up the pieces after yesterday's events. Crockery stalls at a local market are doing brisk business. Many people's china shattered when the tremor struck on Wednesday morning. The owner of one stall, named Mr. Zhang, says he's offering a 10% discount to customers.
We've got a lot of stuff piled up and it's all a mess, so we're asking customers to clear out some stock.
Close by, authorities are demolishing unsalvageable buildings. Several have been leaning on heavy tilts. So what the workers here are trying to do is to build up a pile of rubble in front of the building so they can then gradually let it down. They're saying that the job will be done by Friday, and that's important because of the risk of aftershocks. These structures leaning precariously pose a threat to people so long as they aren't brought down. Despite the severity of the earthquake, measuring over magnitude 7 on the Richter scale, experts say the damage has been relatively contained. Strict building codes and regular drills at schools and workplaces have helped. Volunteer Huang Yaonan was among those that rushed to this scene in Hualien the day before.
They all gathered at this location, set up tents because the roads from Taipei were blocked, so the teams from Kaohsiung and Pingdong could only come from the south. They brought rescue personnel and even search and rescue dogs along with their equipment.
Authorities remain on alert for aftershocks. There are fears of further rockfalls and landslides. Thursday marks Qingming, also known as Tomb Sweeping Festival. People have been warned not to go to mountainous areas while paying respects to their ancestors and loved ones. Patrick Falk, CGTN, Hualien.
Agathokles Giaralis is Associate Professor in Civil and Environmental Engineering at Khalifa University Abu Dhabi and an expert on structural dynamics at City University of London. Professor, good to see you. Perhaps it's still too early to give a definitive answer, but what are your initial impressions on the impact of this earthquake and Taiwan's preparedness and resilience?
First of all, thank you very much for having me in the program. I have to say that on average, Taiwan proves to be very resilient given the magnitude and the severity of this particular seismic event. Yes, there are some damages and some buildings have tilted. Yes, there are landslides, but overall, the extent of damages is well within what we would expect from a very well-prepared country for such natural disasters.
And presumably part of the story is engineers, architects building in resilience to infrastructure in anticipation of earthquakes?
That is right. The fact of the matter is that in all seismic, high seismicity regions in the world, there are currently very good seismic codes for earthquake-resistant design of structures. So the knowledge is there, but what makes the difference is how people adhere, the different countries, the different regions adhere to these building codes, how engineers design, and equally important, how they make sure during construction that design plans and are followed religiously, I have to say, and so quality control makes a big difference, as well as preparedness and training of people before, during, and after such an event, what to do and what not to do before, during, and after the event.
I'm guessing this is a story, as far as the engineering goes, around poverty, wealth and corruption. I mean, is that something that poorer countries would be able to achieve, or is earthquake resilience a luxury only affordable, perhaps, by wealthy countries?
Current and modern codes for seismic resistance do take a lot into account on the cost-effective factor. So, in other words, we make sure that we don't put arduous requirement for extra cost to make sure that a structure will sufficiently resist earthquakes, at least for life safety, to meet life safety requirements. So this is out of the question. It is affordable, at least for new build structure. What is there is a challenge there, is what happens with code deficient existing structures that were built different eras before current seismic codes. So, for example, in Taiwan, there was a major revision of the country's standards in 1997. So structures built before that date will be code deficient. And bringing them to the today's requirement level of earthquake resistance would cost a lot of money. And of course, as you mentioned, corruption and I wouldn't say necessarily corruption, but poor mentality or poor quality control during construction and poor awareness of the consequences of what may happen in the event of a major seismic event. If you have some poor quality control in a building that is built in London, okay, you may have some water leaks, for example, or some noise from next doors, which, okay, is disruptive on a daily basis. But if poor construction happens in a high seismic area and a major one happens, a major earthquake event happens, then this is life-threatening. Okay, so the consequences are different.
Professor, we have to leave it there. Great to get your expertise on this. Thank you very much indeed, Professor Aggelokas Gieriaris.
Thank you very much.
US President Joe Biden is due to speak with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu later. The call will be their first direct contact since the Israeli airstrike that killed 7 international aid workers earlier this week. The White House says Biden will express his frustration and anger over the attack, which Israel says was a grave mistake. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Sarah Coates, watching events for us in Tel Aviv. Sarah, what are we expecting in this phone call, and what more have we heard from Israeli leaders about this airstrike?
Hello there, Jamie. It is expected to be extremely tense as this relationship just continues to sour. Now, in terms of what we've been hearing from Israeli officials, very little except from that initial apology with relation to that airstrike, which of course killed these 7 foreign aid workers. Although we have heard from a spokesperson from the Israeli government around an hour or so ago with relation to this investigation that is ongoing. She came out to say that the results can be expected in a matter of weeks. Now, this comes as international outcry over this incident is only growing. Here's what we heard from the founder of the World Central Kitchen.
I spoke to President Biden yesterday. President Biden made a statement, which seems is already a harder stand, but it's very complicated to understand that we are going to be sending America is going to be sending its Navy and its military to do humanitarian work, when at the same time, weapons provided by America, not to defend Israel itself from missile attacks, but use weapons that are killing civilians in this moment.
Sarah, the Israeli military has issued a new alert for combat troops. What does that mean? What's that about?
Jamie, the Israeli authorities are extremely concerned about a possible retaliation by Iran after that strike in Damascus, which is being blamed on Israel. Over the course of the day, IDF reservists who are combat soldiers, they've had their leave cancelled, as you mentioned. More troops, reservists, they've been called up. Air defences have been bolstered. And also GPS signals right across the country are really being blocked. If I tried to, let's say, access Google Maps or something like that right now, it would most likely tell me that I'm either in Cairo or in Beirut. Now, this is, of course, to potentially thwart any drone or rocket attacks, which Israeli officials fear may actually come from Iranian soil if there is a retaliation, and not actually from these proxies like Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now, we do know that the War Cabinet is expected to meet a little later tonight. They will be discussing that threat, and it comes as this tit-for-tat battle continues on Israel's northern border. Just over the last hour or so, the Israeli military has been carrying out airstrikes in southern Lebanon, and that is a response to an anti-tank missile attack in a northern community of Israel, in the community of Shalomi. The missile hit a home, causing a fair bit of destruction. So certainly very tense times here on the ground, Jamie.
Sarah, thank you for that. Our correspondent Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv. Let's get the view from Gaza now, and our correspondent Noor Harazin, who's in Rafah. Noor, we're hearing reports of a new Israeli attack in central Gaza. Tell us more.
Well, Jamie, actually there were hundreds of Israeli attacks, strikes, shelling in almost all of the areas of the coastal enclave. There were attacks in northern Gaza, in middle Gaza, in southern Gaza. However, over the past 24 hours, Israel intensified in attacks in the cities of middle Gaza and the camps that are located in middle Gaza, like Deir el-Balah, the Al-Nusayrat refugee camp, Al-Maghazi, Al-Mughraga, all of these places. I mean, we're talking about dozens of airstrikes, hundreds of Israeli tank shells that landed on the eastern side of middle Gaza. A number of Palestinians were killed. Also here in Rafah in southern Gaza, which is supposed to be a green area, there were several Israeli airstrikes. One airstrike actually on the Abu Darras family home that happened overnight. 11 people were killed, including 7 children and also a pregnant woman. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, 62 Palestinians were killed in Gaza over the past 24 hours, and this brought up the death toll here in the coastal enclave since the 7th of October up to 33,037 Palestinians.
Noor, we know that aid operations have been limited after the attack that killed those charity workers. What's the situation like now for Palestinians trying to access supplies?
Well, Palestinians here in Gaza, and since the start of this war, and they completely depend on the humanitarian aid that is being allowed through Rafah or being offered to them through the organizations like the UN or the World Health Organization, the UNICEF, the World Central Kitchen, all of these organizations that were working here on the ground in Gaza to help the people, especially after Israel actually destroyed all the food infrastructure in Gaza and imposed a very tight siege on the coastal enclave. So yes, the people already depend on this aid. However, even though there were several organizations that are working here on the ground, and even though there is a number of aid trucks that are being allowed into the Gaza Strip from Egypt, but still we were talking about malnutrition, about a famine in northern Gaza, about starvation, and actually today also a child died because of starvation in northern Gaza, and this brings the death toll of among the people who died because of starvation in northern Gaza up to 30 people. So yes, the situation is catastrophic. This latest Israeli attack on the 7 workers of the WCK means that, and especially that they halted all of their service here in Gaza, means that more people actually on the ground will be starving. Especially this comes also where other organizations, like for example the UN, their teams cannot move around freely to distribute the aid on the Palestinians here in Gaza.
Noor, thank you for that. Our correspondent Noor Harazin in Rafah. And 3 former Supreme Court justices have joined more than 600 members of the British legal profession calling for the UK government to stop arms supplies to Israel. This follows similar calls from several opposition politicians urging the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, to change policy. In a 17-page letter, judges and barristers say the provision of military assistance to Israel may render the UK complicit in genocide. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, NATO celebrates 75 years of the military alliance. But are they all marching in the same direction and paying their way?
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us.
And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. The race to rescue hundreds of people still trapped beneath the rubble following the strongest earthquake in Taiwan in 25 years. Our other headlines, the US-Israel alliance straining under the pressure of Gaza. President Biden's due to speak to Prime Minister Netanyahu. Their first contact since the deaths of 7 aid workers. Europe and the United States are stronger and safer together, a veiled warning from the head of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg. He was speaking in Brussels at events to mark the 75th anniversary of the military alliance. Ministers have been discussing securing a 5-year funding plan for Ukraine. There are growing fears of direct confrontation with Russia and even a possible breakup of the alliance if Donald Trump returns to power.
I don't believe in America alone, just as I don't believe in Europe alone. I believe in America and Europe together in NATO, because we are stronger and safer together.
Let's talk to our correspondent John Beaver in Brussels. John, tell us more about these anniversary events and what's been said.
Well, in terms of what is being said, I can see behind me at the moment the Polish foreign minister is talking to his local press. Just to my left, we have the Norwegian foreign minister as well. And just over in the background is the Spanish foreign minister. So this really is the chance for all these different parties to go to their local presses to say what has been talked about here. And of course, what has been focused on today. Yes, the 75th anniversary of NATO and celebrating everything that's been achieved. But as well, I think we've heard from Jens Stoltenberg, just as we heard him talking there, about how North America and Europe are stronger together. So today was a chance for NATO to try and present a united front, very much to show themselves as united in the face of the number of challenges that face them. As you mentioned, of course, funding remains an issue, and who pays for NATO. Wider concerns about what would happen if Donald Trump returns to the White House as well. So all of these things are issues that are being discussed, but certainly there are plans being put in place here, and there are now lots of discussions going on behind the scenes from all of these people behind me and their advisors over the coming weeks and months to try and turn ideas into action.
And just remind us of what's being discussed in particular in regards to Ukraine.
Well, the sort of headline figure that was being talked about was $100 billion over 5 years, trying to switch from short-term support to long-term support. But in terms of the actual details of that, Jens Stoltenberg wasn't being drawn on it and said that he wouldn't comment on that until further discussions went on behind the scenes. But there are lots of questions as to do with that money, whether it's new funding or where the money is coming from and how it's going to arrive, or whether it's just previously promised money being repackaged. All of these are the sorts of questions that are being asked. The Ukrainian foreign minister was here today as well. Now, he has called again for Patriot missile defense systems to help protect his country from the increased recent Russian missile attacks. So we'll be hearing more about that. But of course, there is lots for NATO to focus on. But certainly at the moment, Ukraine, they're saying, is the top priority and one that requires urgent attention. So NATO not just looking back at the last 75 years, looking forward at the issues it faces currently as well.
John, thank you for that. Our correspondent John Beaver in Brussels. Well, as the alliance marks its 75th anniversary, the Kremlin has repeated its opinion that Russia and NATO are close to direct confrontation. Its foreign ministry has accused NATO of continued expansion towards Russia since the 1990s. Moscow says that by supplying weapons to Ukraine, NATO had become a de facto party in the conflict. The US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has arrived in China, her second visit to the country in a year. She'll meet Chinese officials in Guangzhou and in Beijing, together with some American business leaders. Yellen is expected to address what the US claims is China's manufacturing overcapacity. The visit comes days after President Xi Jinping held a phone call with Joe Biden as the two countries seek to increase cooperation. Well, speaking to reporters before her departure, Yellen said Beijing and Washington both benefit from trade and investment, but she also voiced her concerns.
I think it's important at all levels, and for me, at the level of the Vice Premier, to communicate both the value we place on our relationship but also the concerns we have, and have agreed that we need to have a level playing field. In particular, we're concerned about massive investment in China in a set of industries that's resulting in overcapacity, and we're concerned about the spillovers that Chinese subsidies to these industries are having on the United States and other countries as well.
Well, China said earlier this year that the claim of overcapacity in the country's manufacturing sector is groundless and unfair. Let's talk to our correspondent Huang Fei, who's watching events for us in Guangzhou. Huang Fei, what's on this agenda then as Janet Yellen begins this trip?
Hello, Jamie. Yes, Secretary Yellen will be having 2 days of meetings in Guangzhou starting tomorrow. She will be hosting a roundtable discussion with economic experts to discuss the challenges and opportunities in China's economy. After that, she will meet with the governor of Guangdong, Wang Weizhong. And in the afternoon, she will attend a meeting by the AmCham China, meeting with more representatives of U.S. businesses in China before meeting with Vice Premier He Lifeng. Those conversations are expected to carry well into Saturday morning. Many topics are on the table, but if you look at the timing of her visit, as you said earlier, this is coming on the heels of a conversation between President Xi and President Biden. Beijing has raised concerns over U.S. policies to restrict trade and tech developments by restricting the sales of high-tech goods, and including semiconductors. Now, Secretary Yellen will be hoping to foster better economic ties here and alleviate some of the tensions, but at the same time trying to protect the rights of the U.S. manufacturers at home. And outside of economic issues, she will also likely discuss other common issues concerning both countries. This includes climate change, tackling illicit financing, as well as helping debt-distressed nations. Jamie?
Huang Fei, thank you for that. Our correspondent Huang Fei in Guangzhou. A sacred festival is underway in China, marking the traditional reverence of ancestors and deceased relatives. Known as Tomb Sweeping Day, the Qingming Festival sees family members tend the graves of loved ones. It dates back 2,500 years and falls at the beginning of spring, according to China's calendar. And that is the world today. Thank you for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.
Hello and welcome to the weather forecast. I'm Tierney. Well, over to Europe. Wide scope of precipitation will continue for many portions of the continent here on Friday. Snow will mainly favor the portions here up in the north, while some light to moderate intensity of rain will be rather prevalent here from Ireland all the way towards into Poland. And Saturday we'll see no big changes of the wet weather forecast. We can notice that here for many of the southern half of the continent we'll see quite a lot of cloudy to clear conditions over the next few days. And under this weather pattern, and the coldest area of the continent will probably be up in the north. Most of the high temperatures will be down in the negative readings, and single digits of high temperatures will be taking the dominance here for many of Russia. Well, notice that here southern half of the continent will see a lot of warmer high temperatures. Most of them will be in the 20s or even up into the upper 20s as we head into this weekend. So please enjoy the warm weather while it lasts. About business and travel, a high of 27 degrees Celsius is in the forecast here for the city of Paris on Saturday, with the potential showers in the afternoon hours. And high temperatures in Madrid will also be in the upper 20s, but notice that the overnight low temperatures will be just about 10 degrees Celsius. So please pay special attention to the big temperatures difference between the highs and lows. And that is all from me. Stay tuned for more. City Forecast.